now it is time to get ready for our next speech and presentation. So, Harles, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kaspar. Milovan, do you hear us?
Yes, hello.
Nice to meet you. I think now we can actually start with weather forecast. So, can you tell us, please, where are you at the moment and how the weather looks like? Any clouds?
Hello from sunny Novi Sad from Serbia. The sky is clear. There is no clouds in the sky, but we have some cloud providers that I want to share my knowledge about.
As much as I know, you are like a serial promoter of testing in the cloud. As much I see you have presented in C-Test, Testvares, TestCon Europe. It seems that it's like real passion, and I might even say that this is like a religion for you. How do you comment that?
Yeah, that's the area that I really found myself. It's really interesting. It has a lot of potential to grow, to learn about it, to gain your power as a member of a team if you know a lot about cloud. So I see my opportunity to grow as a IT person and also to share my knowledge. It's a really interesting area. I strongly recommend it. That's why I created this presentation, its introduction, so everyone can see it and heard it and maybe even share my enjoyment in the cloud testing.
Okay, but then nothing more to say, then let's start. Floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the name of my presentation, as I stated, is Introduction to Functional Testing of Cloud Solutions on example of Microsoft Azure. So let's get cloud. Okay. The topics that I will talk about in my presentation are what is the cloud from IT point of view, of course. I will display you the Azure console. That's the most important tool that I use in my everyday work. Also, I will talk about Azure services, the most used ones, especially on our project. I will describe you our business problem that we are solving using cloud. That will be the main point of my presentation, the test scenario that we will try to explain the services that we use. Also, in the end, I will explain how you can automate this kind of solutions and some positive and negative things about testing the cloud. In the end, I will give you a short conclusion. So let's start. Yes, I'm coming from Novi Sad, Serbia, from the company called HTech. We are a fast-growing consulting company. We have a lot of interesting projects, and for past years, I work on different projects that are cloud-based. This big team on the top left corner, now migrating one enterprise solution to the cloud. They're using Microsoft Azure. On the right side is my also previous team that I worked on Azure AWS. That's also one of the biggest cloud providers. Other things are just pictures from our team buildings. So, I'm huge cloud enthusiast. I'm that person in the airplane that sits near to a window and take a lot of pictures. Actually, some of these pictures are mine. But of course, from IT perspective, it's not what cloud is. This is one old joke that I really enjoy. It's child talking to his dad, I think. It says, "Dad, what are clouds made of?" And IT dads respond something like Linux servers mostly. It's much more than that. It's also Windows servers, Macintosh servers, and so much more. And people think that cloud solutions are placed somewhere up in the sky. But actually, this is how cloud facilities looks like. This is the footage of one of Microsoft data centers. It's one big building with a lot of equipment. So they are really regular buildings. Why it's called cloud? Some of assumption is that in the meetings, the internet is presented on the whiteboards as a cloud. So that's why it's called the cloud solution. But actually, it is really real building that have a lot of equipment in it. What is important to notice here, that is Microsoft Azure have a lot of these buildings in a lot of different geographical regions. That's very important for disaster recovery that cloud offers. I will explain that later, but this is just one of the facilities they have. So in the beginning, I would just like to explain the difference between some traditional on-premise approach versus cloud approach that we have now. When you have on-premise approach, that means that your company have all that equipment in sense of servers, databases, and so on in their own control. Literally, they have physical machines and they have software on it with the operating systems and stuff like that that they need to maintain. So it's okay when you have some steady demand for your services, some steady number of requests, but imagine Netflix or some service like that when they release the new episode or new season of very popular shows like Casa de Papel. And in that moment, demand jumps really high. A lot of requests come to that service, so they need to have equipment, infrastructure to support that kind of demand. So when they don't use that all equipment, they need to maintain it, and in the periods of low demand, they need to have even that machines that are not used. On the other side, we have cloud providers that offer almost everything. So they say, okay, you can use our infrastructure, our processors, databases, and so on, as much as you. And when you use it, you will pay for it. When you don't want to use it, when you want to decrease your usage of it, of course, you will not pay for the stuff that you don't use. And even maintaining of the operating system and softwares that run on those machines are not your concern. They have the teams that take care about it. So the most important thing here to remember, you can use the cloud in the sense that pay as you use it. If you want to use it a lot, you will pay a little more. If you doesn't want to use it, you don't have to take care about all that equipment and infrastructure. So what are the first problems regarding cloud? In the first time, some people were skeptical, of course, about their data, about their code, about their resources. So you need to give that to some other company to take care about it, to cloud providers. But security is one of the biggest business risk for these companies. So they have to be really, really careful about it. So they have really great security teams that deal with security attacks every day. And in that sense, they are very, very good. So the trend is noticed that companies not afraid of security in the cloud. They even migrating their solutions to the cloud in order to improve their security, because their teams are literally fighting against security attacks every day, and they are very, very careful about it. So security is no more issue. There is no a lot of security breaches in the cloud, because as I stated, there is the most important security business risk for this kind of companies. So what are the benefits of the cloud? Why would we switch from on-premise world to the cloud? One thing is cost saving. I already explained that we don't have to have all the machines, database servers and stuff like that in our system. Scalability. You can scale up and scale down as much as you want. Security. I said a lot of companies now switching to the cloud just to improve their security. A lot of services are offered from the cloud providers, so you have a huge flexibility to use all those services. Automation is one of the basic pillars of cloud computing, and also disaster recovery. You have different sets of equipments in different geographical regions, so if some nature disaster occurs or some power outage happened, you can just switch to other data center and there is no outage of downtime for your application at all. And is this really true? Of course, if you implement it correctly, it will be cost saving, but if you don't, it will be very expensive, so you lose that cost saving. Is it scalable in that sense? Of course, if you implement it correctly, if you configure your services to be scalable, it will be scalable. So if you don't do that, then you lose scalability. You need to know how to use security features in order to have security benefits. Flexibility, once again, you need to know how to use service. Automation, a lot of pre-work need to be done in order to use full benefit of automation in the cloud, and disaster recovery also needs to be implemented correctly. So if you don't implement it correctly, you will have no benefits of cloud solution. So in order to have all of these benefits, who will be the judge in that process? Of course, the QA team. If our importance were high in on-premise world, now in the world of cloud computing it's even higher. We need to think a lot of different aspects and test our solution. How are we going to do that? We need to learn about cloud a lot. I don't know, do you remember this game? This is called Red Alert. It's a strategic game. But you see those black areas of the map. In order to see in those areas, you need to send some researchers to go in that area. And once you conquer that area, it will be visible to you. That's how I see the cloud. And the good thing is that you will always have some new things to learn, some black areas to explore. Okay, so what is the business problem that we try to resolve using cloud solution? That is some company that produce the equipment for chemical industry, some instruments that are sold all around the world. And they need to have connection with it in order to send some commands and receive some data from those instruments. In order to do that, they use cloud. If you look example of one instrument, you will see that on the left side there is instrument, on the right side there is web application, and they need to communicate somehow, and we use Microsoft Azure as a bridge between those two entities. Before I explain you the web services that we use and how I tested and monitored those services, I need to show you the Microsoft Azure portal. It's a web application when you can access it using any browser, and then you can manage and monitor all your web services that you use. One very important thing here is to notice, if you notice in the left corner, there is resource groups. Basically, you can access any environment that you want just on one click. And in that environment, you can access any web service that you want to check or manage. There is over 100 of services that cloud providers are offering. I will show you the most important ones that we use and how I test those. So what is the test scenario that I want to show you? We will do a measurement or experiment on our instrument, and then we will send our results to the cloud, and that it will be displayed in web application. So we will measure things and send it to the cloud, to the web application using cloud as a bridge. First service that I want to explain you remind me of Octopus. Why is that? It's called Azure IoT Hub. So all the instruments in our system needs to be registered on IoT Hub, and we then can see what instruments are connected and which instrument is in online state. So when I start testing, if I see some problems, first address where I go to look it up is Azure IoT Hub. There I will check is this instrument are successfully registered on our IoT Hub and is it communicate correctly. If there is a problem with this communication, I can contact my developer and say, okay, I didn't find our instrument on the IoT Hub. Can you please help me? Maybe there is some problem with the internet or certificate is not installed properly, and that's all. Okay, if that is fixed, I continue my investigation, how that flow is going, how experiment results are processed on the cloud. Next address where I will look it up is Azure Service Bus. Azure Service Bus is a service that connects decoupled services. So basically, it is a listener-subscriber relationship where some services publishes messages here on this Azure Service Bus, and others wait for message to be received, and they pick it up. We use JSON files for this communication. So Azure IoT Hub publish message on Azure Service Bus, and then our Azure Service Bus decide if this message is a good one, should it proceed to the next service, or is it bad one, so it ends up in dead letter queue. The message can be declared as a bad one if it's have a bad model, bad structure of data in their JSON file, or some required fields doesn't have value. So if there is a problem with the message, I can go to the Azure Service Bus, I can find bad message, I can copy it and analyze it, and maybe send it to developer and say, okay, this message is not adequate. Can you please fix the model or populate the mandatory fields? And then we can proceed. Next service that I will check up what's going on is Azure Functions. All our smartness in our solution is placed here. That's why it reminds me of Nikola Tesla, one of the smartest people in history, and I'm proud to say that he's my countryman, that he comes from Serbia. So all our logic, all our coding is placed here in Azure function. Once it picks up message from the Azure Service Bus, it starts processing it. How can I check it? I can use application insights to check the loggings, what's going on in Azure function. This is just one small example how it's used, but in the start it's a little bit harder to learn that logging queries, but for a while you're used to it, you learn it as any other technology, and that gives us as a tester really great opportunity to be really close up to white box testing. We can literally see what's happening during the processing of message in Azure function. Next stop in our Azure cloud is Cosmos DB. It is one of the DB service database services in the Azure. This is NoSQL database. It reminds me of an elephant because it can store a lot of data. If you don't know, the elephants are one of the smartest animals in the world. They can memorize a lot of things. How can I check what's going on in the Azure Cosmos? I can query that NoSQL database. It's really easy to query that database. They use some SQL-like query language, and I can check what is stored in our database. If proper data are stored, I can proceed on the next service where I can proceed with my monitoring and testing. If it's bad, of course, once again, I can check it, I can query it, I can get results, and I can contact developers, report a bug. Next service that I want to talk about is API management service. It's literally a service that expose our API endpoints to the outside, to the internet. Looking from outside, it looks like any other web service. So it have endpoints. Basically, it reminds me of a waiter because I can say, okay, waiter, can you please give me experiment with the ID result 1, 2, 3, and waiter say, okay, he hears it like get me results with this URL, and of course in the end he can give me those experiment results. So now our full chain is completed. From the left side to the right, you can see all points in our chain and how we communicate from the instruments to the web application. Now, from this point of view, the differences between on-premise and cloud testing. When I tested on-premise solution, I didn't have that much flexibility to check the things. I need to go remotely to different machines and then do some logging systems. And if I want to check the database, I needed to check the SQL management system to remotely connect to different servers to check when we get even to the different stages of our development. different environments, then it multiplies and we need to know which resource is placed where. On the cloud, it's much easier. You have Azure portal where you can really, on one centralized place, you can check everything. Even switching from environment is on one click. When we talk about test automation, for the web application, it's literally web application like any other. It is hosted on the cloud. But for that, we use Catalan Studio to automate our GUI automation. For API automation, we use Postman. And we target our endpoints on API management system. And for performance testing, we use JMeter. It is very important that we notice here performance testing and load testing, because cloud is really powerful in that sense of view, and it can cover all our needs in the sense of load and performance. But once again, we need to configure our solution properly. So even in the cloud solution, you need to do performance and cloud and load testing, because when we did that using JMeter, we found some bottlenecks, and after that it triggered some changes in configuration, and that helped us to have our solution to be better. Also, the outputs of our automated tests can be included in a continuous integration, continuous deployment process as a part on the CI, on the Azure DevOps. So we can easily have really fast test reports and to know the state of our system. And in the end, I would like to spend some words on cons and positive sides of testing cloud solutions. First negative side is complicated queries when you try to query the logging system on Azure Functions. Of course, it will be noticeable in the beginning, but after a while you will get knowledge in that area. Data preparation in Cosmos DB. By default, you don't have multi-select of the records in your database. So if you want to delete all the data, you need to delete the whole container, which is from Cosmos DB point of view, something like table in the SQL. Or if you need to delete some specific records, you need to delete them one by one. There is no by default implementation for multi-select. Of course, there are some store procedures, custom store procedures, which you can use, but it needs to be done by developers or someone who have knowledge with the querying of these kind of tables. Positive sides, everything on the cloud is really practical for monitor. You don't need to change different servers and stuff like that. Everything is accessible using that Azure Portal consoles. And also a lot of things are convenient for automation. Automation is one of really important things of cloud computing, especially from testing point of view. A lot of services are set up that way that are very convenient for test automation. So that we saw different types of clouds. We don't have knowledge, we will think about clouds in that way, but I hope after this presentation you will see the clouds something like this, maybe even something like this. So I really hope you enjoy my presentation. Feel free to contact me. I'm mostly active on LinkedIn, but I also have Twitter. Feel free to contact if you want to discuss or ask any questions regarding cloud testing.
Thank you, Milovan. Now it's time for questions. Are you ready?
Yes, thanks.
The first question is about the risks. You already mentioned that there is a financial risk if you do not delete your resources after you finish testing. Is there anything else? For example, how do you ensure that your testing data does not mess up production environments?
Yeah, as I said, in the cloud, it's very easy to access different environments. You need to be careful about resources, but you need to learn about web services in order to not generate some costs. But if you think about messing up with the production data, they are very divided. So you cannot access the production database from different environment. It's very easy to using Azure portal to access specific environment. In our example, we have development, testing, staging, and production environment, and accessing those environments can be even managed by Azure portal. So maybe some of the younger members of the team doesn't even have access to production environment.
Okay, thank you. The next question is regarding differences between different cloud providers. I'm quite sure you have experience at least with AWS. Can you bring out some things what are similar or different between cloud providers, or you can take the same approach?
Yeah, basically, I worked with two most popular cloud providers, Azure and AWS. And from implementation point of view, I think they are quite different. But from the testing point of view and the using of the services, they are really, really similar. Just the name of the services are actually different. For me, it was quite easy to switch to Azure portal because I was very used to AWS portal, which is really similar. There are some differences. Basically, for switching environments on AWS, you need to have a different credentials for every environment. But from Azure point of view, you just need to switch the resource groups. That's the thing that I remember. But other things and other services are really, really similar. What is also different from monitoring point of view, and on AWS, for monitoring of the functions, which is called Lambda in AWS world, we have some Cloud Watch service that have a lot of things that are not paying. You don't need to pay for those things. On application insights, I think by default the starting point is already paying, and a lot of queries can generate a lot of costs. So you need to be extra careful when you're querying the application insights using Azure services.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. You mentioned different services you are using during testing, like functions, database, monitoring, logging. If you think about skills and competencies of testers, what do you suggest? What additional skills testers must have before they start testing in cloud environments?
Yeah, I think that integration testing here is a key word or key skill that testers need to have before start testing in the cloud, because a lot of components communicate with each other. But what is a good side, even AWS and Azure and AWS providers have a great certification program, and there are literally different levels of those certificates, and they're offering a lot of documentations and platforms for learning about cloud and stuff like that. I strongly recommend people, even they are not using the cloud, it will use soon enough because it has a lot of advantages, to go and look for certification for Azure and AWS. It's really have a great entrance level certificates. It's really interesting to learn. And as I said, testers are now moving from some people that are just testing things. Now we have a lot of options to suggest how we can use and implement a different type of services. But for that, you need to have a knowledge. And as I said, certifications is a right way to go.
Thank you. If you already mentioned certificates, then which certificates do you have?
Actually, I'm preparing the Azure certificates. I'm starting with entrance, and also I learned from AWS certification, but I never went on exam. I have to admit that. But it's very interesting, and I recommend everyone to try to see how it's going.
Mm-hmm. Then yes, there is one more question at least. So if you are working with the team where do you have business representatives, testers, developers, maybe DevOps people, then are they all testing in the cloud environment? How do they feel in such kind of projects?
Yes, I think that combination that you mentioned of roles is a great because you can learn from each other, and especially DevOps is important in the cloud world. Business likes it because it's really simple to understand, and also you can access the portals for checking the services, so it's not complicated to access it. What I learned that developers and DevOps are really feel comfortable dealing with it, but business just doesn't want to take a lot of roles in that. But it's quite easy to understand from conceptual view how cloud works. And it's really easy to express your idea to every stakeholder on your team, how some things will be implemented and in the same time how they will be tested.
Thank you. Let's come back to the financial topics. Who is responsible to close down the project and who is responsible for the testing budget? For example, if you keep some kind of expensive resources running over the weekend, then who will get the feedback from the manager?
Yeah, I would like that it is shared responsibility of the whole team. Of course, I think that team leaders have greater responsible. But what is a good thing about it that you can configure some triggers that will block the usage of your system if you reach some money levels. And I think that approach is really good. It gives me the sense of comfortable to not create a huge cost on our project. We configure those triggers, and we have some services that are following our usage of our system. So in any moment you can see what is the amount that you are spending. It is really important when we talk about performance and load testing. For that, we will need to be extra careful because it generates a huge amount of traffic. In the same time, on the cloud, it generates a huge amount of costs. But on those tasks, when you do some kind of performance or load testing, you need to have a lot of knowledge and you need to ask a lot of people for permission to share responsibility for that and to configure those limits very carefully, not to create some problems.
Clear. And there are always success stories what people are eager to talk about. Can you share with us your maybe the biggest failure while testing in the cloud?
My biggest failure? Sorry, I lost you for a second.
Yes, your biggest failure, for example, have you messed up something? Have you deleted the environment?
Yeah, I did the environment, but I have access to the database, and as I said, it's not just reading. I think I changed some fields, and I created dirty data on the AWS, and that led to some bugs. And after that, the developers was not happy about it because I created a problem. But as I said, you need to learn a lot about cloud services because it is possible to have some really huge disasters in the sense of leaking your data maybe, or even getting some huge costs. But as I said in the beginning, that fear was high, but by the time I learned about it and understand it, it really disappeared. And as I said, I have now the talk with my developers, should I change something in the database, because I said I have access to it and I changed it and I created some dirty data. But after that, everything went smooth. We realize it and fix it.
Nice to hear. And now comes the final question. If you can choose whether test applications on running in the cloud or on-premise, which is your favorite? Understandably, as you talk so much about testing in the cloud, then we can assume that the cloud is your preferred choice, but still.
I think that both approaches have their benefits from testing point of view. Of course, you always learn something different. Cloud have a lot of benefits in some specifics, but in the same time, there are systems that maybe have much more benefit using the on-premises approach. For me, it's always interesting to learn something new. For the past few years, I'm totally focused on cloud testing, but I remember the time when I tested the on-premises applications, and I think for a tester, is always a great opportunity to learn about both approaches, and then they can use the knowledge from one approach to testing other. But clearly, I think that the cloud solutions are future of the software development. They are not even future, they are currently present. We see a vast majority of projects and solutions are hosted in the cloud, and they use cloud solutions before they are using on-premises stuff. So if I must pick, I would pick cloud, but if I have opportunity to test things that are hosted locally, I would enjoy that as well.
Thank you a lot, and good luck on your journey